Hi, I'm Sue Bursztynski and I'm going to read to you from the manuscript of my current novel, The Sword and the Wolf, which is a prequel to Wolfborn. The heroine is a Bisclavre, a born werewolf, and she's been hiding out in the forest by herself for a while, and one day when she's about to change, she makes a very strange discovery. One of the tricks I'd learned was the safest way to hide my clothes if I needed to change away from my hut. I was rather proud of it, actually, and wondered if other werewolves did the same. Those of them who were talented magic-wise, of course. I suspected most weren't. I hid them in trees. I didn't need to touch them to change back, only sense them nearby, and anyway, I had enough human awareness to unspell them. Now, I don't mean I hid them in tree hollows. What I did was lay them against the tree and encourage bark to grow over them very quickly, or open a tiny hollow if there was one and cover that. It left my clothes a bit sticky but safe. Clever me. Sooner or later it was going to get me into trouble, or would have if I had played around with the wrong tree. All things considered, I was very, very lucky that day. I got the spell slightly wrong. Silly, really, since I'd worked it out myself with a lot of experimenting, but my mind was on my hunt, and instead of opening the tiny hollow I'd expected, there was a rumble, a crash, and the whole tree opened up. It was full all right, but not of sap. A middle-aged man with long, grey-streaked hair fell out and collapsed on the ground. He wasn't dead. I saw his chest rise and fall as I rolled him over. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment he blinked up at me. Then he found a voice, though a hoarse one. "Aren't you cold?" I suddenly realised I had no clothes on. I'd removed them for the change and simply forgotten. It was such a natural part of my life. Embarrassed, I slid my gown back over my head. "Who are you?" I asked. He didn't answer my question right away. "Help me up, would you?" I propped him against the tree trunk. It had closed up again and looked as if it had never held the sleeping body of a wizard. Well, he had to be a wizard, didn't he? "Do you want water?" I fumbled for my water bottle when he nodded. Luckily, I always left emergency supplies near my clothes. You never knew. Shrewd blue eyes looked up at me. "A Bisclavre, I think." That startled me. "How did you know?" "Who else would be wandering around naked in the forest but a werewolf? And you're rather young to have been making deals with the dark." He changed the subject suddenly. "Never mind. How long have I been in there?" "How would I know? I don't mean to be rude, but isn't that rather a silly question?" "You're right." "It is. Very well, then let me work it out for myself. I need to know. Who is king?" "Nobody," I said, bewildered. "The old one died before I was born. They say the prince is still alive, but no one knows where he is. Some even say he's being brought up in fairy by Cadros and Nematona." He laughed hollowly, though he'd looked a little green as soon as I'd said the old king died before I was born. I continued, "The lords just fight it out among themselves. Oh, we have a lord of our own, but he's like the rest of them. Someone's army marches through our village every few months, crops get trampled, and that's only when they're in a good mood and don't bother doing any worse. In fact, my father was a mercenary who got lost in between battles between lords. I don't even know who he was fighting for. Looking at you, I'm afraid to ask, but how long ago was this?" I did some calculations. "Well, I suppose it must have been around 14 years ago." He groaned, pulled out his beard. I've been in that cursed tree 14 years then, and he's grown up without me. If he's grown up. I have to know." Hope you liked that.